Yep.
All right, well, thank you. I'm Craig Kelly, aka the Science Geek. This presentation tonight is specifically on the topic of, I suppose, a crux for most people is the fat loss enigma. And, it is very challenging to utilise stored fats as a fuel source, and I'll explain to you some of the chemistry, the reasons behind it, and how important it is for you to understand what most people are trying to undertake is a 168-hour-a-week venture. It's not about coming to a health facility or a health club facility for a few hours a week and not making any other alterations outside of the health club. Predominantly, it's all based on nutrition timing. You'll hear and you'll read such things as calories in, calories out, and obviously there's some truth to the matter there, but if it was just about calories in and calories out, the epidemic we have with obesity and some of these metabolic syndromes, etc., wouldn't be where they are today. So once some of these things become made visual to you via diagrams, etc., and metaphors and acronyms, you might have a better understanding of what you're trying to undertake and how challenging it is to achieve what you're trying to do. But as with most people, they don't attain the goal for two reasons. One is they don't know how to, and secondly is then, and probably the most predominant reason, is they are really not willing to sacrifice the things they need to obtain their goal. So, again, I can't control any of those things for you in regards to making you want to achieve your goal, but I can give you parts of the jigsaw puzzle that you can sort of synergise together to form a positive outcome for yourself. And as you know, with all the staff here, we're more than happy to help. Obviously, we all have different expertise in areas that we flourish in, but we'll always try to give you the most informative and correct information that's going to suit you best. For those of you who have never been to one of these presentations previously, as I said, my name is Craig Kelly. I'm the Managing Director of the Health and Fitness Division of the Australian Cruel business. For those of you who don't know some of my history, so I have been morbidly obese, I've been anorexic, I've been bulimic, I've been megarexic. So I've been through every avenue of body shape change that you can imagine. Everything for science. I'll do everything for science to feel your pain and go beyond the call of duty. I don't recommend anorexia or bulimia to anyone, not at all, but it's definitely part of my history and it's part of who I am. So in many ways, I believe that makes me a better nutritionist and exercise scientist. For those reasons, I can empathise a little better with some people. And I have life experiences rather than being just a statistician and provide you with numbers, etc. If I can give you a little more of the things that I've been through and some of the detrimental aspects of those hideous eating strategies that I've undertaken, and therefore the physiological damage that I've obtained through those things. So I've had many spinal surgeries and fusions. Some of that related to the eating disorders and being malnourished, so with anorexia nervosa and bulimia. Obviously not supplying the body with the nutrients to make new cells and membranes, bones, etc. I suffered badly, and they're part of the reasons to do with why I've had so many spinal issues. Secondly to that, going from an extreme weight of 39 kilograms with renal failure up to well over 110 kilos as a heavyweight bodybuilder. The stresses that you put on your body there, they're just extreme. But again, I don't regret any of those, and they're just part of the story of who I am and what I do and why I'm so passionate about trying to convey a message and help as many people as I can. There's just been a recent survey, the Australian Health and Fitness Survey, 2009. And surprise, surprise, the outcomes to why people attend health clubs and personal training studios, the top two were to lose weight, one, and secondly, to change their body shape. Now, I've almost become very much of a renegade in this industry and a skeptic because of some of the things that I convey, and that is that you don't necessarily need to live in a health club to attain a goal in regards to weight loss and physical change. You do need to become one with the kitchen though. You know, the real gym of life is definitely the kitchen. And people have to become aware of the nutrients they put in here. And once you put something in there, what does it do, where does it go, and how will it help you achieve your goal? Because I see people day in, day out. Geez, I don't know how many people I've seen over the last, nearly 20 years in this game talking about weight loss. You can convey a message to people over and over again about these are the pathways you need to follow to achieve that goal. And they'll go away and do their best for, a 24 to 48 hour window, and then it's too hard again. And the reasons that most people fail is because of the 7 Ps, and a lot of people have heard this before, is that you achieve through the 7 Ps, proper preparation and practice prevents piss poor performance. So ultimately that's in any avenue of your life. So whether it's at school, whether it's in sport, whether it's in relationships, in a workplace or romantic relationships, you name it, it's the same thing. The same guidelines adjust. You've got to choose a goal, you've got to have the pieces in place to achieve that goal. Because in every single day that you go through, no matter what avenue, here's your goal, but there's temptation, and they're going to sit there and it's going to pull funny faces at you. It will do so. But it's about the power within the empowerment to achieve a goal. So that is me in a nutshell. So from here, we'll lead into some of the technical guidelines in regards to specifically sugar and carbohydrate, aka carbohydrate, and how that can be almost one of the inhibiting factors, if not the most inhibiting factor in regards to being able to get into the fat cell. So I'm going to draw a fat cell first. And for people who've never been to one of these things before, and to see actually how fat loss takes place and how bloody hard it is to do. So here's the fat cell, and within the fat cell we have a stored form of energy called triacylglycerol or triglycerides, fat tissue inside. And we're going to use a bank metaphor, an ATM. So these are the stored fats within inside the cell. So we've got truckloads, absolute abundant numbers of fat cells. The trick is how, as most of you people and most of the individuals out there are looking at how this cell can atrophy or become smaller. How do we do that? Well, the science tells us that we need to obviously get inside the cell membrane, transport these energy stores out of this cell into the bloodstream. So first we've got to get that active and moving, and then there's only one place in the human body where you burn fat. So once you're able to get these out into the bloodstream, you've got to get it to muscle tissue. And within inside muscle, there's something called the powerhouse or the mitochondria. So this is how we've got to go from here to there, and then from there we've got to tap on this cell here and go, I want to come in and play, and you've got to get that there into there, and then we've got something called beta oxidation, which is the burning of that fat, so we're able to get to it. That's how it is supposed to happen, but this is how it has to happen. We need something called adrenaline. It's a stimulant, the fight or flight hormone. So once you're scared, you go, there's a hormone released from something called the adrenal cortex, which is an activator of a specific lock and key. a beta receptor. We'll use an ATM, as I said, analogy. So here's our ATM machine. Now we need something to get into the ATM machine, which is called your PIN number. You've got your own individual PIN number, and for all intents and purposes, that is adrenaline. Adrenaline allows you to put in this code that will allow us to get inside this cell. Now we're inside the cell, that's the first part. Then we've got something called cyclic AMP, cyclic adenosine monophosphate, which then becomes something called the most important aspect of fat loss. HSL, hormone sensitive lipase. And obviously we hear lipo means fat. So this simply means this is a fat splitting hormone. Without that, no fat loss occurs. None whatsoever. Zip, zero, none. The Glockenspiel ist kaputt. None whatsoever. But once that's there and that chemical plethora takes place, all of a sudden our little fat friends become activated. We transport those out of the cell membrane via a transport protein into the blood. Fine, now we've got this underway. We've got the fat burning process underway. But this is where it gets real fun. Once this fat's floating around in the blood, as we said, we get to a muscle cell. And the fat's sitting there, the triglyceride, or what we call a free fatty acid, FFA. He's knocking on the door. It doesn't end there. It's already hard enough, but it gets harder. We need another specific amino acid now, protein, called carnitine. Carnitine becomes another friend that binds to this fatty acid and transports it within the cell membrane to the mitochondria. This is how fat loss takes place, to the T. That's the chemical pathways that take place. And that is so hard to take place because, as we said, the mothership, the one that matters most, HSL, hormone sensitive lipase, can only work if you have stable blood sugar levels. Meaning that you don't have any insulin, a hormone called insulin, a powerful anabolic, making bigger, storage hormone. Insulin we hear predominantly with the diabetic community. Insulin is another powerful hormone that inhibits, stomps on. Zero fat burning, none whatsoever, if that is in your bloodstream. So therefore, how can we keep insulin at bay? What are the things that affect insulin secretion? And this is where we start to get a little interesting. Insulin has one purpose. Insulin's purpose is to maintain a steady equilibrium or homeostatic blood sugar level. No peaks and troughs, none of this. Nice and stable. So once you put tucker in the food tube, in there, and it goes through the esophagus, down through the stomach, small and large intestine, out into the bloodstream. Once it enters the bloodstream, this is what's going to happen to our blood sugar levels. Whoa, up it goes, because our blood plasma glucose levels will be elevated, which is outside normal. And we have something that governs everything that goes on in the body called the hypothalamus. And he says, oh, this is not good. Reverse the message and say, we need a hormone to bring this back to a happy state. Because otherwise, if our blood sugars elevate like this, we're going to go into a coma, a hyperglycemic coma, which is obviously dangerous. So we have these secondary messengers that control this. So insulin, this powerful hormone, is secreted from the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas to compensate and make those adjustments so that our blood sugars are once again here. That sounds fine and dandy, that's what we're built to do. But that thing there stops all fat loss. All fat loss is stopped via that. So, once again, one of the most important avenues for preventing fat gain, and secondly, for if you want to inhibit fat loss, is to have our blood sugar levels change. So we need to be able to be aware of knowing what we put in here that's going to have a detrimental effect on what goes on in there. These are where these eating strategies come about. LCLC, low carbohydrate, low calorie diet. Why carbohydrates? Carbohydrates. We'll first look at what this is first. So it tells us in the name, carbohydrate. It means the water that's bound to the carbon molecule. That's all that means in scientific text. Water. This is the big thing with these low carbohydrate, LC diets. If you go into a low carbohydrate diet, most of the Western world will eat anywhere from 250 grams per day of carbohydrate, plus to one of these eating regimes that say low calorie, low carbohydrate diets, which become 50 grams a day of carbohydrate. You've made a massive adjustment in regards to the quantity of carbohydrate consumed, so you're 200 grams of carbohydrate alone in deficit. Fine. What does that really mean, therefore, Craig, in regards to the hydrate component? Well, for every 1 single gram of carbohydrate that we ingest, 3.7 grams of water is bound to that carbohydrate molecule. So that means for every one, you're really storing 4 grams of fluid within inside a cell. That's weight. So once again, you make a dramatic cut every day for a week from your carbohydrate intake, and you get on the scale. Quite literally, you could be losing 1/2 of 1 kilo of weight a day. These are the big things with those initial low carb, low calorie diets. Of course they would. They're fantastic in regards to the psychological benefits of dieting, because you get an instantaneous response, no doubt in the world. So I'm definitely not going to knock them. I've got no need to knock them. If they're the catalyst that starts an individual obtaining a positive outcome, I'm all for them. The hard thing about it is it becomes very hard to stay structured along an eating strategy like that. But this is therefore carbohydrate, as it says, the hydrate of carbon is the food source that we ingest that has the most, and I underline most, elevation effect on blood glucose. So therefore, if we have an acceleration in our blood glucose, well then we know Big Daddy has to come out the plate. And we therefore know now that if insulin's about, what do we get in regards to fat? 0 burning. No fat burning at all. None. So this is where a lot of people unfortunately go wrong, is that we'll discuss with them previous to their activities. Oh, what are you going to do before you go and train? Oh, I might have a piece of fruit, or I'll have something not long before I train for my energy. You know, I need energy to train. Well, you know, as soon as you put something in there, whatever it is, any glucose-based, sucrose-based, galactose, we'll go through all these sugars in a minute that have an effect. You inhibit, stop, fat burning completely. Does that mean that it's detrimental in regards to cardiovascular health benefits in a health club, strength benefits in a health club? No, not at all. But again, remember, the sole purpose of this information is what 99.9% of individuals I see are asking for. Fat loss. Everyone wants fat loss. This is the things that inhibit fat loss. So no eating before you train if you want fat loss. Now I'm talking about the Joe and Betty bag of donuts, the layman. I'm not talking about Matt Shervington and Libby Trickett and all that. They're a completely different kettle of fish. And if we're having that conversation in regards to elitist athletes, well then this is all, again, not the information I'll be sharing with those individuals. But again, most of us here aren't competing for world record javelin attempts and world record running events. We need to learn how to change our physical structure and tap into this fuel, which we have an abundance of. For most individuals, whether male or female, the upper echelon of energy that we can store as carbohydrate is about 2,000 calories. A gentleman in a textbook, in an anatomy and physiology textbook by Kendall, They use an example of a gentleman who's 65 kilograms in weight, which is sort of very, very wafer, you know, they're very light on, like almost jockey in nature, at 12% body fat. So a reasonably fit gentleman, and he stores over more than 75,000 calories of fat on his body. So that's a 12% body fat. Most of the individuals we deal with a minimum of 20% body fat and onwards. So that means that there's a massive reservoir of energy that we need to be able to tap into. And if people want to tap into this energy reservoir, they've got to be very aware that they should not be having insulin exposed in their blood serology, because it's only going to inhibit what happens in the fat cell. That is the crux of all of how insulin and fat loss happens. Now we've got to look at something called, they're called glut transporters, so glucose transporters. This is where it gets really interesting. Biochemists have found just through studies that we have more than 13 glut transporters, but for all our intents and purpose here, we're going to focus on 1 through 5. Now these GLUT transporters are simply something that means when our blood sugars are elevated, so we've got glucose in our blood, it doesn't mean that this cell here, might be a nerve cell, can just say, you get in here. It'd be great if that could happen. We have specific systems in the human organism that allow these things to happen, a lock and key. We've got something inside the cell called the nucleus, and the nucleus then controls these special proteins that'll sit on them, they'll sit in here, and when they're required, they'll be sent to the cell membrane. And the cell membrane then is like, come here, I'm waiting for you for specific glucose molecules. So if glucose is about, this membrane will send a message to say, right, you come here, you bind our lock and key, it's transported into the cell to allow it to respirate, so us to survive. But we've got these different transporters here that do different things. And this is where we start to find the simple sugar that we've heard a lot of, fructose. Fructose is obviously in fruit, but it's in nearly everything that's processed. And this is where you will be amazed how fructose will inhibit fat loss, and any fructose you put in your mouth, any, is converted straight to one thing, fat, nothing else. Because the systems in our body don't allow anything else to happen. So glucose 1, or GLUT 1. GLUT 2, 3, 4, and 5. GLUT 5 is only for fructose. That means it only is activated by fructose. GLUT 2, fructose and glucose. Glucose only, glucose and glucose. This is where it gets interesting. The glucose 1 transporter is on every cell of the body. So that simply means this keeps us alive. All us breathing, every cell in the body has this specific protein on the membrane that pulls glucose into the cell so we survive. GLUT 2. Okay, this one, it's what we call insulin dependent. So we need insulin to pull glucose into this cell. Glucose 2 is on the liver and on some other cells of the body. GLUT 3 transporter, probably the most important that we have. For the brain only. Non-insulin dependent, so it doesn't need insulin to pull glucose into the brain. Aren't we lucky? Because if it was, we'd be non-coherent a lot of the time. This is just a system that works without us even thinking. So this is so very important. This one, as we said, only with fructose. So the glucose 5 is only on the liver. Only place is on the liver, the small intestine, and that'll be only place is found in the female body, the liver and small intestine. The only difference for a male is we also have it on our testes. That's because the testes rely very much on fructose to push the sperm along. This is the one that is scary for us. Glucose blood 4 transporter is on muscle cells and fat cells. Insulin dependent, meaning we need insulin to pull it in. So this is where any glucose that we have in our body can be converted to a fat very, very, very quickly. These are the things that biochemistry, I don't want to get too technical with all this stuff, but this is critical that nutritionists should know this stuff and be very able to utilise it effectively and say, well, have 3 or 4 bits of fruit a day and you'll be right. And it's not right. Every drop of fructose you have here, and I'll show you why. We said that fructose, we've only got one place that we can use fructose, in the liver. Only place. Outside of the male testes. So then, depending how big your hoo-hoos are and how much you use. But, so once fructose is absorbed, so we eat fruit, breakfast cereal, honey, jam, Uncle Toby's muesli bars, they're full of fructose and high corn fructose syrup and crap. It's absorbed through the small intestine. That's where these blood transporters are. So that means it's in the blood. So once it's in the blood, it's transported around. But no cells in our body have the ability, none at all, to use fructose. The body uses glucose. Fructose can't be used to drive a brain, can't be used to drive a muscle, can't be used to drive anything. It's just gunk. The body says, get rid of it, you've got no good for me. It's very fast energy though, it will give lots like turbochargers, will turn on and we can make lots of cellular energy, adenosine triphosphate from it. But if we can't pull it into a cell, it's no good to us. So the body goes, we've got all this energy, but what do I do with it? Oh, we can't use it anywhere, well let's make it into fat. It's exactly how it works. Exactly how it works because we've got nowhere to use it. None whatsoever. But this is the thing that drives me insane about all these fat loss, nutrition gurus and all of this. They don't either know this stuff or they studied it that long ago and they just got through an exam and then I'm a nutritionist, then I can tell you to eat lettuce leaves and fruit and no, don't worry about proteins and stuff like that because that's not going to be the key to your proteins for muscle building. Christ, everything we've talked about here, these GLUT4 transporters are proteins, enzymes are proteins, cells are made from proteins. You don't eat protein, none of this happens. So you want to function effectively, you need to get your head around how fructose could well be the reason that we suffer with obesity, metabolic syndromes, and the list goes on. It's quite technical to why this doesn't work, and it's a specific enzyme called phosphofructohexokinase. It's a specific enzyme, but it doesn't allow a specific enzyme to be switched off. If that enzyme, it's called HPK1, if that's not available, we can't switch off the production of energy. Glucose allows us at certain stages, because we have specific enzymes, to switch it off. Fructose, because of the way it works, bypasses all these specific enzyme shuttles and channels, and we just, every drop of fructose you ingest, so if you have honey, 40% of honey is fructose, well 40% of that's going straight to fat. Every drop of fruit you have is going to fat. Now this is something I really want to make sure that I quantify effectively here, is that I am not here to tell you not to eat fruit. Not at all. What are the the benefits of fruit? They're rich in phytochemicals, anti-cancer fighting substances. They're rich in antioxidants. They're rich in fibre, vitamin and mineral. They're a fantastic food source. If you don't want fat loss, that is the key here. That is why I underline again, fat loss is what I'm talking about here. Not general health and well-being. Can you get fruit into a fat loss diet? Yes, you can. But it's about when you would eat it so that you've got no detrimental aspect to inhibiting fat loss or increasing the fat stores. So take-home message here is, so far, fat loss is bloody hard work, and unless you put 100% effort into it, you're not going to achieve it. Because it's a lot different from getting fitter and stronger. You can come and run on a treadmill every day, and crikey, you'll get fit. No doubt. But it doesn't mean that you'll look any different in front of the mirror naked. Has anyone got any questions in regards to that? Because a lot of that, unfortunately, being chemistry, and I'm going to pull myself back a second. Just, when was that? Alex? April this year? April this year, there's a nutritionist and dietitian who's well renowned, and I'm not going to take it any further than that. But this individual was asked a question in a forum about a specific hormone, and her response, their response to the question was, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a biochemist, I'll need to consult a specific colleague of mine who is. Now, 90% of nutrition and dietetics is chemistry and biochemistry. I lost all respect for that individual with that answer, because it just meant, I just want people to pay me $175 for half an hour to come and see me so I can tell you to eat a lettuce leaf and this, that and the other, with none of the understanding about why and how that will work. Yes, I need to know it, and as a nutritionist, dietitian, physiologist, exercise scientist, we have to know that stuff. But it doesn't mean I need to make it scientifically difficult for you to understand it. So most people will come and say, I need something that's applicable, you can give me to take away so I can implement into my daily routine. Now these are the things that it's just cut and paste. I can go bang, that's for you, that's for you, that's for you. Outside of sitting down and going, okay, now tell me more about you. I'm on this drug, I'm on that drug, I've got celiac and Crohn's disease. Okay, well then the story takes a step back. We've got to start to look at those avenues as well in regards to nutrition and absorption and storage, metabolism. It's endless. But again, let's take away, first and foremost, you've got a great picture now of how you get to the love handles and how that stuff that sits inside them can get used. And then, yeah, Jude.
Excuse me, you're talking, going back a bit about fruit.
Yes.
Should it be eaten at a certain time of day, like the morning, preferably to the afternoon, or evening
Good.
instead of the morning?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And as I said, again, I go backwards. Can you have that in a fat loss diet, fruit? And I said yes.
Yeah,
okay. The really important time is post resistance training or panel beating. Because once you've been to the weight training abode, you get in there and grunt and groan and sweat and do all that stuff. Again, remember that we store fuels or carbohydrates in the muscle and the liver. So if you train hard, and I mean hard, not like, okay, like a lot of people do, not everyone, far from it, but a lot of people, they don't train anywhere near the intensity that one, they can perform at, and two, they need to perform at to achieve their goal. If that's full, our petrol tank, before we start training, and we want the muscle and the liver, where we store carbohydrate, to be empty after training. So we need to tax ourselves hard. So that means once they're empty, once we consume food post-training again, they're empty. So that means the first thing that insulin will do, remember insulin's the storage hormone, it's the shuttle bus. He's the one that goes around and collects any of the sugars in the blood and takes them to cells, to pull it into the cell. That's its job. So if that's empty and that's empty, well that means the insulin shuttle bus can make a deposit down inside of them rather than the fat cell. Because every time insulin's about, I draw the fat cell with an unhappy face because that's how most of us feel about it. But you know what, this fellow inside us, he's just like this, he's on fire. Oh, he can't get any bigger, he's small. Because every time insulin's about, predominantly the Western world, we live on carbohydrate-based foods. It's in everything. Fructose is in everything. So he's just going, feed, feed, feed. Unbelievably so. But if we have, remember our fruit post-event, where can we store fructose? In the balls for the male and in the liver. So if that's empty, that means we can shuttle some of this fruit, more specifically the sugar fructose, into there. But be very careful, Jude. Maximum storage capabilities for a female is about 20% less than males, obviously for obvious reasons. Males are a lot larger and have more muscle tissue and organ mass. So most females can store between 70 and maybe 80 grams of carbohydrate in the liver. So not a hell of a lot. So you can't go and have too much fruit, but by all means you can have 1, 2, 3 pieces of fruit, no problem, and have no detrimental fat storage that would go with that. So there's not too many people I know who dislike fruit. It's sweet, it's lovely, it's nice. So we should be able to eat it. You know, to obtain not only a fat loss goal, but as we said, secondly to that, and for most of us, more importantly, for health reasons. You know, but it's only when we start to talk about the morbidly obese when we go on those, you know, protein drink diets only. You know, but for all of you people, no, not at all. We need to use food as our tools.
Right?
Yeah.
You talk about fat loss, so you don't eat, obviously, before you work out.
Yes.
Now, if you're sort of, take me, if I go doing fast walking with a little bit of jogging,
Yes.
if I don't eat any carbohydrate, do I have enough energy to do what I'm doing without feeling fatigued very quickly?
I can answer that here straightforward. Remember, every gram of fat we have is an energy source. Anyone who's trying to lose weight has plenty of fat stores available. That is the energy we need to tap into. Will it take you? You'll start out jog and roll if you haven't got any sugars in your system. Quick energy sources, and you'll feel a bit of lethargy and malaise and cross. You know, but all of a sudden, the biochemical pathways take place where we have that gluconeogenesis, glucose being made from another source. So the amino acids and fats in the body have this amazing ability through chemistry to be converted to glucose. So then all of a sudden you get the second wind. Oh, I feel all right now. You know, I'm all right. But it isn't like bang, energy there and away you go. You will feel a little more lethargy and malaise. But again, for the layman who's trying to lose weight and therefore secondary to that fat loss, they don't need to be at their optimum in regards to performance. They need to have their chemical pathways, and more specifically their biochemical pathways, working effectively for them. Ultimately, if you have a secondary goal that becomes the predominant goal, or your primary goal, which is then, CK, I don't care about weight loss now, I want to run a 21k, half marathon, then we're talking different. Then I need to start thinking, okay, well now everything we're discussing now is no longer prevalent. We need to look at Rob's new goal. A good question. Ladies first.
Okay, how long before a workout then should you not eat?
Okay. General rule of thumb, Karen, is minimum 90 up to 120 minutes before you train. And the reason that is simply this. If you eat before you train, so we put food in the tube, well then you've got to digest, absorb and store that nutrient so that while we're digesting and absorbing, we've got all this going on with sugars and hormones. So we need to get it back to steady state. Once it's a steady state, that means we have no more insulin about to inhibit fat loss. But if we eat within that window, okay, it's going to inhibit fat loss. But see, this is where goals are so very different. Remember, this is all fat loss based. Currently, my goal is to build as much muscle tissue as I can. So, as I'm walking into my first rep, I'm basically living on glucose, simple sugars, because I need, insulin is king, absolute, unbelievable in regards to muscle tissue development. Reason being, remember we said that muscle is where we store carbohydrate. So I need insulin because once insulin's about, these GLUT4, these transporters we talked about, remember I said GLUT4's on muscle and fat cell, he comes out of the nucleus to here and says, I'm here brother, come to me. So insulin grabs hold of this sugar and pulls it into the muscle. So therefore I can train harder, longer and stronger. But for the whole time I'm training, again I've got no chance in hell, none, of utilising fat as fuel. So that's why my goal would be different to a lot of individuals. But a bodybuilder dieting for a specific contest where they get down to zip body fat, well then we've got to make adjustments again. We go back to a sensible eating strategy for them to activate fat stores. Glenn?
Just back to the fruit, you said after resistance training, what about cardio?
No. Reason being, cardiovascular activity synergizes fuels for use. It will use a little bit of fat, a little bit of sugar, and maybe a little bit of amino acids as fuel, proteins. So that's with cardiovascular exercise. Resistance-based training exercise is only carbohydrate, is only glucose. So that means that if that's where we're getting the muscle tissues are being going from full tank to an empty tank, so that we get the opportunity to have insulin to transport to the liver and muscle tissue. If we have it after this, because they're never getting depleted, that means that we've still got plenty in there. That means that insulin will go and say, okay, we've got a little bit we can put in there, but Christ, we've got truckloads left. Where's that going? Fat cell. That is the big thing. That's why the two are different. And you've all heard me say this before. Well, again, I shouldn't state that because not everyone has. Is if you want to change your physical structure, go through the body metamorphosis, you're the Volkswagen Beetle to the Porsche, you go to the panel beater. You don't take your car to the mechanic to look different. You take the car to the mechanic to perform different. There's a big difference. So, yeah, really good question. I'm lost. Alzheimer's. Or coffee or red wine or something. Chocolate. Good on you. Is there any other questions that, in relation to that?
I've never been a real big breakfast eater. And I just want to know, and everyone says it's the most important meal and stuff, but like if I'm dropping my kids to school and coming to the gym, should I be eating an hour and a half before I come?
Okay,
Or
two
is
things.
it not? No.
The name breakfast says it all. Break fast. All the evening, there's things you can't see. This is the biggest thing with the human being. If we can't see it, we don't worry about it. But inside, there's cells that are dying and being regenerated all the time. And once we're asleep, okay, this is where a lot of this takes place. So much energy is lost. And all our glucose levels drop. So you're in the perfect position. Once you wake, you're in a fat-burning furnace. So if you are to consume a really good food source, then you're going to replenish your muscle stores and liver stores with no chance of being fat converted because there's no what we call calories stored. If you don't eat, and it's for some hours after you've awoken, metabolically, so the furnace within smoulders. It goes out to a tiny little whimper. So therefore the energies that you should be able to burn become a little David Matisse buzzbox, okay? Not a big V8 engine that's just going to use these energy and increase the thermic fire within inside. So that's your decision to make. Should you eat breakfast? Of course everyone should eat breakfast. But it's really dependent on the 7 P's. Proper preparation and practice prevents piss poor performance. You've got to just say, here's my goal, what will enable me to do that? Will breakfast enable me to do that? Hell yeah. Okay, but it's a matter of you trying to find something that you can structure that's not going to take away from the other avenues of your life, like being a mum and, you know, running around like a blue ass fly, all those things. Jen.
So you're saying that someone who really likes fruit, doesn't do resistance training, does cardio, will never lose weight?
Correct. Never lose fat. They're making deposits all the time. All the time. The fat cells are getting bigger, bigger, bigger. That's not what I'm saying. That's how the human organism works. You know, so that is something that needs to be exposed to individuals. And it's because of the glut transporters. It's the way the body works. We've got no use for fructose. We can't use it. Remember, every food that we consume in regards to a carbohydrate, a plant-based material, can only be used in one format, glucose. It's the only way the body uses carbohydrate. Bread, fruit, jam, whatever. Any carbohydrate, rice, can only be used as glucose. Fructose is not glucose. So we've got no place for it to be used, except converted to fatty acids.
So your suggestion to this person who's, and I know this person, cannot lose weight, is to stop eating fruit.
Or to make the investment in regards to their life to do a little bit of resistance training and then enjoy their fruit as well because of the health benefits of fruit. That is that real quantum physics question, the $64 million question. Can I eat it? Yes, you can, but when do you want it? The whole thing with physical structural change is about not what you eat, but when you eat what. Nutrient time.
It would be best to eat fruit in the morning.
Yeah, you can, but you still know that even if you eat it in the morning, it doesn't prevent the whole chemistry pathways changing just because you've eaten it in the morning. It's still going to be converted to a fat store. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Right.
Sorry to be a nuisance, but
Never a nuisance, Marion.
I've gone a blank. Can you just explain the difference between the cardio and the resistance training again with regard to
Fat loss?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just draw a dumbbell because then we know that that's weight training, okay? And cardio, I'll draw the half. Okay, so weight training, fuel equals carbohydrate. That's all we use in weight training because it's explosive, it's anaerobic, means without oxygen. So therefore we can only use this because it's very fast to get to where we need it. And remember, weight training is all about explosive power. This, on the other hand, aerobic activity, fuel, predominantly carbohydrate and fat. So this is good because you get to burn a little bit of fat. Plus, in later stages of endurance, amino acids and proteins. Depending on how hard you work aerobically will be dependent on the fuel that you use. The harder you work, the more carbohydrate sugar you use. The lower intensity you work at, so if it's a real, walking down the road sort of stroll, the more of this you use. But, wait, there's more. That doesn't necessarily mean that low intensity exercise is best for you. Because it still means that if you work low intensity, you burn low calorie. Because it's, I could walk for half an hour at this speed, but I might burn 25 calories. I'll go to the treadmill for 3 minutes and run at 16k. I'd burn 120 calories. So still, therefore, the percentage changes between these would still mean I might burn a lot more calorie fast, high intensity exercise, and I might burn only a low amount of calorie in low intensity exercise, but there might be a higher percentage of fat I burn here, but I'm still nowhere near that. I would still burn a higher percentage, a higher number of fat calories working at a higher intensity. So to answer this question effectively, I need to state, when you are a novice, or whether you're deconditioned, or whether you're coming back like Jude in not too distant future from a rehabilitative state, you don't run, you don't get on the cross trainer and build yourself around. You build a foundation fitness first. You don't build a house without a foundation. So you work and increase your cardiovascular fitness slowly so that you can ultimately work where you see all the HIIT, high intensity interval training, like you do. Run, walk. That's where you're going to get the best of both worlds. You're going to burn a lot more calorie, you'll go for a lot longer. And remember, as we said last week, the one true benefit, the one really important benefit of aerobic activity over weight training for fat loss is, and this is for the cardiovascular advocates, why cardiovascular exercise is more important for fat loss than weight training. I'll come back and state this, but why? Muscle cell. Here's the tendons that joins to the bone. Remember we said right at the start, we've got to get fat to one place, the mitochondria. Mitochondria equals the powerhouse. The only place we can burn fat is in the powerhouse. Guess what aerobic activity does? Makes more of these. We get more mitochondria through aerobic training. We don't get it through weight training. So this means that you've got more places to burn fat if you do aerobic training, but it still doesn't make it any better if we've still got insulin about. You still can't do it, but you can't burn fat if you've got more mitochondria, you've got more houses but no one to put in it. Doesn't make any sense. But the beauty of aerobic activity is that we know evidence is supporting of mitochondria density increases. So that's a beautiful thing. So that means the perfect scenario for most individuals would be go to the gym. Don't eat before you go to the gym. Go to the gym, do a 3 to 5 minute little warm up, disco dancing, whatever you do. Go to the power meter, 35, 40 minutes. Knock yourself out, big muscle groups, lots of testosterone, the fat burning hormone and growth hormone, so you're a fat burning machine, petrol tanks are empty, and then you get onto the treadmill of life for maybe 5 to 10 minutes and work a little bit of high intensity stuff up and down. When you've got no sugars left, because the liver's empty, the muscle cell's empty, but you're still going, the body goes, oh my God, this person's nuts, they still want to go, I've got no glucose left, what am I going to use? Fat! It'll convert fat to glucose through gluconeogenesis. Increasing the fat burning effect. So you become tight-toned and yummy mummies and, big, bold and buff males. That is really the key to it all.
Right, so you post cardio.
Yeah. Yes. Good one. Right. A synergy, this is what you really should eat. Perfect breakdown would be this. 6 grams of amino acids, which is protein. This is hot off the press. And 20 grams only of simple glucose. Which equates to something as simple as this. You're going to have a glass of milk, which is going to give you lactose, glucose and fruit, and lactose and glucose, the milk sugars. So you're going to get roughly between in a glass of milk, if you have a low-fat milk, there'll be subtly more lactose milk sugar in it than there would be in fat milk. So I'm telling you not to have fat milk for this. You'd have no fat milk, so it gets into the system quickly, and you're getting your proteins with your milk proteins as well. That would be a fantastic replacement. But to get a better benefit, you would have, once again, same quantity, 6 and 20, but 1 time scoop of protein powder and 3 times teaspoons of simple sugar. That is the recovery fuel from the gods, because glucose transports this into the cell and aids in recovery and repair. And there's not enough glucose, detrimental amount of insulin to inhibit fat loss. It's just enough to start the repair process. Easy.
So, on a Monday you do resistance training?
Yeah.
First.
Yes.
Second day.
But you need protein after weight training too.
Yeah. So on Tuesday then you just do cardio and you do that?
Yeah.
So you can do that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, going back one. If you do your training in the morning, that means you have that and no breakfast.
after you've trained.
So, breakfast.
Then you'd have after, if in a perfect world, you'd want to be eating again within an hour after that. A proper oats, porridge, wheat bix, vita brits, 9-grain bread, Bergen soy and linseed, Bergen, egg on toast, scrambled egg, perfect.
Yeah.
Mm.
After
So
5.
that's what I meant about the breakfast thing. I eat it in the morning, or do I do my workout and then
Yeah, that would be best. For fat.
to do the workout and then go and eat breakfast?
Correct. Jude,
Talking about
5 minutes to go.
talking about the fat loss,
Yeah.
it keeps burning. What about like if I go on to water, when I'm walking, I go on to water aerobics for another hour?
Same
That
principle.
continue the fat burning.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're
Breakfast
moving.
after that.
Yes.
It's about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, but again, the simple thing to do would be you could have, in between weight training and going to aqua, because you work hard when you're at your optimum potential, you always work hard. So a little glass of milk is not going to hurt. It's going to, but they're the things though that you're going to have to try and work out in regards to the timing of your exercise.
Could yogurt instead of milk?
No, it's going to take a lot longer to get into the system because of the gel factors that are in yogurts. It's hard to get it right, but when you come back, we'll discuss those things and get it spot on.
Back to the carbohydrates before, plant-based carbohydrates. Then you've got the mix of carbohydrates that produce protein.
Yes.
Or tofu.
Yes, legumes, pulses,
That's right.
nuts.
But at what stage do they stop being a carbohydrate and become protein?
Once they get to the liver, because the liver's the metabolic organ that breaks them down. So, because the proteins are bound, a protein, as you know, so if we've got a nut, what you choose it. What, you want nut, you want tofu, you want legume?
Tofu.
Okay, so we'll take tofu. So there it is there. That's how we see it, and that's how it goes in there. Once it goes down through the mouth, into the gut, it starts to be blatantly honest, it starts here. It's being broken down here. It's called salivary amylase, the specific enzyme that starts breaking down the carbohydrates in this food. So it starts in there. As we come down through there, this is the stomach, by the way, I'm a fantastic drawer. That's the stomach. So once we get to the stomach, no carbohydrates are broken down or fats then. That stops there. And the only thing that's broken down in there is proteins because of the acidic acid, hydrochloric acid. Nothing else can be broken down in there. So the proteins or amino acids, well, the proteins are converted to their amino acids in the stomach. And then from the stomach we get to the small intestine where the remaining carbohydrates are broken down into their individual glucose molecules. And then it's packed up and goes to the liver. And then the liver deciphers where it goes out and plays.
So, would it store what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, so it only starts to get stored once it comes out of the liver. Because once it goes out of the liver, it's called the hepatic portal system, where that enters the bloodstream through a specific, we've got the subclavian vein up here, and it'll go into the bloodstream and through the hepatic portal vein into the bloodstream. Then you've got individual amino acids floating around and fatty acid molecules and glucose molecules. So that's when it'll have the effect on the cells and the nucleus and the GLUT transporters saying, hey, I'm ready for you to come in here, or a nerve cell might be over here saying, I'm ready for you to come into the brain, into the neuron, so that would be GLUT3 transporter. Here's a fat cell, this is sort of the unhappy one, so he'll have the GLUT4 transporter, that'll be saying, yeah, you feed me now, and we'll have a muscle cell over here with the GLUT4 transporter there, and that's how it works.
But if you have just meat,
Yes,
that would just be protein.
protein only.
No carbohydrates stored.
None, because there's none in it. If you just had shit.
So vegetarian, it's more difficult for vegetarians.
Oh, very much so. Very, very challenging for vegetarians to drop fat. Very. Because their whole diet is a synergy of carbohydrate, amino acids, and fats in one, formal matrix. Yeah, where obviously it's, for a non-vegetarian, you can, have one purely, you put a salmon steak on a barbecue and eat just that, well then, as you said, there's no carbohydrate to go with it. It's a synergy of amino